beautiful wife catches millionaire husband cheating at their wedding. She cancels everything on the spot. On a day meant to celebrate everlasting love, the unthinkable happens. A pregnant bride unearths a betrayal so profound that it brings her wedding to a standstill. Alison Harrington, radiant in white and carrying the hope of a new family, believes she's moments away from marital bliss with her millionaire fiancé Evan Carter. Instead, she stumbles upon a devastating secret that forces her to confront the very core of their relationship right at the altar. Hearts break, loyalties shatter, and an entire congregation watches in stunned silence. Get ready for a roller coaster of deception, heartbreak, and strength discovered in the most shocking way. Alison Harrington had always pictured her wedding day as a fairy tale come to life. Raised in a modest family in the outskirts of Los Angeles, she spent years believing she'd never quite marry into the high-flying world of the elite. But all that changed when she met Evan Carter, charming, confident, and impossibly wealthy. He was every inch the self-made millionaire success story, complete with a penthouse view of the city and a coterie of influential friends. From their first encounter at a charity gala, Alison felt she'd found her modern-day Prince Charming. The engagement was swift. Within 6 months of dating, Evan proposed during a weekend getaway in Lake Como. He knelt on a velvet cushion in front of a candlelit table, ring in hand, while a string quartet played in the background. Overcome, Alison said yes without hesitation. It was a moment frozen in time, perfect, refined, and brimming with love, or so she believed. But as the wedding day approached, subtle hints of tension slipped through the cracks of their glittering life. Evan's phone buzzed incessantly at odd hours, and he stepped away to take calls in hushed tones. His once unwavering enthusiasm for wedding details waned. Though he lavished Alison with expensive gifts, a rare diamond necklace, a custom-designed wedding gown, his real presence felt distant. Whenever she tried to address this growing concern, he brushed her off with a reassuring smile and a promise that he was just dealing with business. Alison's pregnancy, a joyful surprise, only increased her longing for security and closeness. She was 3 months along, the baby bump still subtle beneath her flowing blouses. While Evan appeared happy about the news, quietly purchasing a top-of-the-line crib and scheduling tours of the best prenatal care facilities, Alison sensed a new wall between them, some intangible barrier that grew taller each day. When she confided in her best friend, Jessica Myers, Jessica merely patted her hand and said, "Maybe it's just pre-wedding jitters, Ali. Men get weird when big changes happen. Don't overthink it." Still, a flicker of doubt lingered. She couldn't help noticing how Evan's personal assistant, Cassie Brooks, showed up at the penthouse unannounced, bringing urgent files that seemed more personal than professional. Or how Cassie's smile lingered a bit too long whenever Alison appeared. When asked, Evan calmly insisted Cassie was indispensable to his business and that her efficiency saved him countless hours. Alison tried to believe him. Days before the wedding, they hosted a rehearsal dinner at Evan's family estate, a sprawling property perched on a bluff overlooking the Pacific. It was an opulent affair. Tiffany blue tablecloths adorned endless rows of tables, while fairy lights twinkled in the garden. Friends and family sipped champagne and wished the couple a lifetime of happiness. Yet amidst the celebration, Alison spotted Evan slipping away from the crowd. She followed him outside, heart pounding. There, in the moonlit garden, she found him locked in heated conversation with Cassie. Their body language was tense, Cassie's arms crossed. Alison couldn't hear their words, but the urgent hush in their voices rattled her. When Alison confronted Evan about it later, he dismissed her concerns. Cassie wanted to go over the final budgets for the wedding investments, he claimed. "You know how detail-oriented she is. always worried about the finances. Though her instincts screamed otherwise, Alison forced a smile and tried to let it go. After all, she had a wedding to focus on, and her heart was full of hope for the future. She reminded herself that Cassie was a long-time employee, and jealousy had no place in a trusting relationship, especially now, with a baby on the way. 2 nights before the wedding, Alison lay awake in bed, resting a protective hand over her belly. Evan slept beside her, seemingly at ease. Moonlight spilled through the curtains, illuminating the swirl of thoughts chasing through her mind. Was she imagining things? Could pre-wedding stress and the swirl of hormones be warping her judgment? She felt silly second-guessing her fiancé, the man who'd swept her off her feet in such a grand fashion. Her phone buzzed, startling her. It was a text message from an unknown number. "Be careful. He's not who he says he is." Alison's pulse raced. She stared at the screen, half convinced it was a prank or a jealous ex. She considered waking Evan to show him the message, but a voice inside cautioned her to wait. If it meant nothing, no sense worrying him. But if it meant something, she needed to be cautious. Clutching the phone tightly, she rolled over, deciding to handle it in the morning. Little did she know that cryptic message would be the first domino in a line of shocking reveals. Her wedding day was around the corner, and the carefully curated world she'd built with Evan was on the brink of collapse. Yet, hope still shimmered in her heart. She trusted in love until the day love betrayed her, right at the altar. The morning of the wedding arrived bathed in sunshine. The coastal breeze carried the scent of salt and lavender into the open windows of the bridal suite. Alison sat before an ornate vanity mirror, her professional makeup artist, Yvonne, gently dabbing concealer beneath her eyes to cover the faint shadows caused by her restless night. The stylists bustled about, fixing her hair into a graceful updo adorned with delicate pearls and crystals. The wedding dress, custom designed by a well-known boutique in Beverly Hills, hung from a gilded hanger in the corner, waiting for its moment in the spotlight. Jessica Myers, her maid of honor, handed Alison a glass of freshly squeezed juice. "You need your vitamins, mum-to-be," she teased, trying to lighten the tension in the air. Jessica had an infectious smile that usually soothed Alison's nerves, but today it felt like even the sunniest disposition couldn't quell the swirling anxiety. Despite the flurry of hairstyling and final touches, the bride's mind drifted to the mysterious text message from the night before. She had half a mind to call the number back, but decided she didn't need extra drama on a day already brimming with nerves. Her mother, Patricia Harrington, entered the suite wearing a lavender floor-length gown that complemented the wedding's color scheme. Patricia was a pragmatic woman who'd supported Alison's every dream, even when Alison first introduced Evan, who was clearly from a much different social stratum. "Look at you," Patricia whispered, her eyes misty with pride as she squeezed Alison's hand. "You're glowing. Your father would have been so proud to see you on this day." Alison's heart constricted at the thought of her late father. She knew he would have liked Evan, or at least found his business acumen admirable. "Thank you, Mum," she replied, blinking back tears that threatened to ruin her carefully applied mascara. "I just want today to be perfect." A sudden knock on the door jolted them. The wedding planner, Grayson Baker, an impeccably dressed man with an iPad in hand, peered into the suite. "We're a bit behind schedule," he announced in a hushed but urgent tone. "The ceremony is set to start in an hour, and guests are already arriving. Also, I have some forms for you to sign regarding the last-minute venue changes." Alison nodded and waved him in. The estate had changed a few details due to a slight weather concern, forcing them to relocate the outdoor reception area. She carefully scrawled her signature in the designated spots, while Grayson rattled off the day's timeline. The first look with the groom, the vow exchange in the main garden, followed by cocktails on the terrace, and a lavish dinner in the glass-walled conservatory. Everything sounded magical on paper, at least. Meanwhile, in the estate's opposite wing, Evan paced in his dressing room. He wore a tailored tuxedo with a crisp white shirt, finishing touches done by his personal valet. Yet, as he stared in the mirror, his eyes betrayed a hint of unease. Cassie Brooks lingered in the corner, scrolling through her phone with a forced casualness. "Evan," she said quietly, "we need to talk." He spun to face her, tension coiling in his shoulders. "Not now," he hissed, glancing at the door to ensure no one else could hear. "I can't deal with this today." Cassie pressed her lips together, stepping closer. "I've tried to keep everything under wraps, but we're running out of time. If she finds out—" "Stop," Evan cut her off. "She's not going to find out. I'll handle it. Just trust me. And keep your head down." A wounded look crossed Cassie's face. "Fine," she whispered, turning on her heel. Before leaving, she cast a final glance over her shoulder, her eyes flickering with a complex blend of longing and resentment. "Don't forget, you made me promises, Evan." Left alone, Evan exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his hair. He'd never thought it would come to this. Guilt gnawed at him as he considered the possibility of everything unraveling right here, on the biggest day of his life. He had a reputation to maintain, a fortune to protect, and a bride who carried his child. The stakes had never been higher, and neither had the risk of getting caught. Back in the bridal suite, Alison slipped into her wedding gown. The dress fit like a dream, hugging her torso before cascading into soft layers of tulle. Jessica helped her secure the final button, gasping at how radiant Alison looked. For a moment, pure joy washed over her, dispelling all doubts. She gently placed a hand on her stomach. "We're doing this, little one," she murmured. As the final preparations concluded, Grayson returned, instructing Alison to head outside for the first look with Evan. Carefully, she descended the spiral staircase, Jessica trailing behind to adjust her train. Her heart pounded at the thought of seeing Evan, a swirl of excitement and lingering unease. She told herself it was just wedding day jitters, that once she looked into his eyes, everything would make sense again. Yet a tiny voice in her mind wouldn't be silenced. He's hiding something. And then there was that cryptic text message from the unknown number. What if it was trying to warn her? She took a shaky breath and stepped into the garden, where Evan stood facing away, waiting for his bride. Sunshine danced through the branches of the tall oaks, casting dappled patterns on the lush lawn. A gentle breeze fluttered the edges of Alison's veil. Evan turned, their eyes locked, and he visibly softened, a warm smile crossing his face. "You're breathtaking," he said quietly, reaching for her hands. In that instant, under the bright California sun, the surrounding doubts momentarily faded. She let her lips curve into a hopeful smile. This was supposed to be their forever sealed with vows, in front of friends, family, and the child blossoming within her. If only illusions could remain unshattered. But fate, as Alison would soon discover, had other plans. The truth was about to crash the wedding, threatening to destroy everything in one swift blow. The sun was high and brilliant when Alison and Evan completed their first look photo session. A hush of excitement buzzed through the crowd of nearly 200 guests as they took their seats. The estate's main garden had been transformed into a whimsical wonderland, complete with cascading white roses, fragrant hydrangeas, and glimmering lanterns strung from archways. Soft classical music filled the air, courtesy of a live quartet. Alison stood with her father's best friend, Robert Langley, who was to walk her down the aisle in her father's stead. Her heart fluttered with anticipation, but beneath that veneer of bridal excitement was a persistent, nagging doubt she couldn't quite quell. She glanced around, trying to locate Cassie in the crowd. The personal assistant was nowhere to be seen. At last, the music shifted and the ceremony began. The bridesmaids drifted up the aisle in their pale lavender dresses, each wearing a soft smile. Then it was Alison's turn. As she took the first step onto the aisle, she felt every pair of eyes on her friends from her childhood, colleagues from Evan's business world, distant relatives, and well-wishers. She could see Evan at the altar, poised with a steady smile. For a moment, it felt surreal, as though she were walking through a dream she'd conjured 1,000 times. The officiant, a longtime family friend named Pastor Marcus Winston, greeted them with a warm nod. He began the ceremony with heartfelt words about love and commitment, speaking of the challenges and triumphs that marriage entailed. Alison's breath caught as she reminded herself of all the reasons she was here: love, devotion, the child they'd soon welcome into the world. Then came the vows. Evan cleared his throat, reaching for Alison's hands. He spoke of destiny, how from the moment he saw her, he knew she was the one. He apologized for the nights he'd worked late, explaining he only wanted to provide the best life for her and the baby. As he spoke, Alison's suspicions wavered, her heart swelling with renewed faith in the man who stood before her. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. She opened her mouth to recite her own vows, words she had rehearsed countless times. But before she could utter a single syllable, the hush of the garden shattered. A woman's voice, sharp and trembling with anger, rang out, "Stop! I can't let you go through with this, Evan." Heads turned, confusion rippling through the guests. Alison's stomach dropped. The voice belonged to Cassie Brooks. She stepped forward, her face pale but resolute, eyes glistening with tears. Dressed in a simple black sheath dress, she was a stark contrast to the pastel finery around her. Evan's face went slack with shock. "Cassie, what are you doing?" he hissed, stepping away from Alison. The officiant faltered, unsure whether to continue. Cassie ignored the murmuring crowd, her gaze fixed on Evan. "I can't stand here and watch you lie to her. Not again. Not after everything you told me last night." A collective gasp rippled through the guests. Camera shutters clicked. Alison felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "What is she talking about, Evan?" she managed, her voice trembling. Evan's eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape. "Cassie, you're confused. We talked about this. You promised I promised I'd wait," Cassie spat, voice cracking. "Wait for you to decide what you wanted. You told me you were only marrying Alison because she was pregnant, that it was a business move to secure your legacy. And that once the child was born, you'd. Her voice faltered, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Alison's ears rang. Her legs threatened to give way. Behind her, guests were whispering in shock, some even rising from their seats. Jessica Myers, tears in her own eyes, rushed forward to steady Alison by the elbow. Evan turned to Alison, desperation written across his features. "She's lying," he insisted, though his voice wavered. "This is some sick ploy for attention." Cassie let out a bitter laugh. "You told me you loved me. You said we'd run the company together one day, that you'd keep Alison on the side until the baby was born and secured your inheritance. How could you do this to both of us?" She turned toward Alison, her eyes brimming with remorse. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." Alison's heart pounded. A film of cold sweat covered her brow. Every second seemed to stretch like an hour. She glanced between Evan and Cassie, looking for any sign this could be a twisted misunderstanding. But the tears in Cassie's eyes seemed genuine. So did the panic etched on Evan's face. In the far corner, a phone's camera flashed as someone recorded the scene, capturing every mortifying second for posterity. The officiant cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Maybe we should move this conversation elsewhere," he suggested softly. But Alison was in no mood to hide behind closed doors. Fury mingled with heartbreak in her chest, fueling a surge of adrenaline. She stepped away from Jessica's supporting arm and faced Evan, her voice trembling with betrayed anger. "Is this true? Did you tell her you only wanted me for my child, your child? Evan's mouth opened, but no coherent words formed. He cast a venomous glare at Cassie. I can explain, but not here. Everyone's watching. Alison's composure snapped. Of course they're watching. It's our wedding. She ripped the veil from her head and threw it aside. You know what? I don't need an explanation. Your silence tells me enough. Her eyes burned, tears threatening to spill over. With one shaky breath, she turned to the stunned crowd. There will be no wedding, not today, not ever. Gasps and murmurs erupted. Patricia Harrington, her mother, broke into sobs. The band trailed off into an awkward silence. Jessica clutched her chest, tears streaming. Amid the chaos, Cassie took a step closer to Alison, but Alison raised a trembling hand to stop her. I don't want to hear more. Just go. Evan attempted to reach for Alison, but she recoiled. Her mind spun with white-hot rage, heartbreak, and a protectiveness for her unborn child. Everything she'd known, every vow, every promise, every dream shattered in the span of a few sentences. Tearing the diamond ring off her finger, Alison flung it at Evan's feet. Without another word, she turned on her heel and walked back down the aisle, tears blurring her vision. She passed rows of stunned guests, ignoring their wide-eyed stares. Jessica hurried after her, guiding her gently toward the mansion. Alison's wedding day had become a spectacle of betrayal and shattered illusions. The world she'd meticulously planned collapsed in public view, and there was no going back. All that remained was the uncertain path ahead, one she would have to navigate alone, with a baby on the way and a broken heart in tow. Alison locked herself in the bridal suite, the echo of gasps and whispered condemnations still ringing in her ears. Within minutes, the once merry throng of wedding guests had split into frantic clusters, uncertain whether to stay or leave. The garden's decor, a testament to months of planning and extravagant spending, now framed a thoroughly awkward scene. Meanwhile, Evan was nowhere in sight. Jessica paced outside the locked door, phone in hand, occasionally murmuring into it as she tried to manage the chaos. The wedding planner, Grayson, was near tears, apologizing profusely to the caterers, florists, and staff who were left in limbo. Patricia Harrington, shocked and livid, had retreated to the far side of the mansion, desperate to shield her daughter from the prying eyes of the press and social media influencers who were already uploading the fiasco in real time. Finally, Jessica knocked softly. "Ali, can I come in, please?" she pleaded. "You can't stay in there forever." Inside, Alison sat on the edge of a chaise lounge, her wedding gown crumpled around her. Her tear-streaked cheeks glistened, eyes puffy and red. The adrenaline surge that had fueled her public denouncement was fading, replaced by deep, hollow pain. She wiped her nose on a tissue. Taking a shaky breath, she unlocked the door. Jessica slipped in, shutting the door behind her. She sank down beside Alison, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Talk to me," she whispered. Alison turned to meet Jessica's gaze, fresh tears brimming in her eyes. "I feel like such a fool," she choked out. "How could I have missed the signs? My God, Jess, I'm pregnant with his child. I was ready to spend my life with him." Jessica pulled her into a comforting embrace. "You're not a fool. None of us saw this coming. He was the perfect fiancé, caring, attentive, and so protective of you." A bitter laugh escaped Alison's lips. Protective of me, or protective of his image? She glanced at her reflection in the suite's ornate mirror. The bride she saw looked haunted, the luster and joy replaced by heartbreak. "He said it was for business," she added softly. "He married me for an inheritance, to secure some twisted legacy for the baby." Jessica's jaw tightened. "That's what Cassie claimed, but we still don't have all the details." "I don't need more details," Alison said, her voice trembling with anger. "He lied to me, manipulated me, and humiliated me in front of everyone. That's enough. This wedding is off. Just then, another knock sounded at the door. Patricia Harrington entered, her expression tight with concern. "Ali, sweetheart, are you okay?" She stepped forward, folding her daughter into a hug. "I'm so sorry. If only your father were here," Alison's voice cracked. "Dad would have pummeled him," she whispered, letting out a shaky exhale. "He never would have let me marry someone like this." Patricia's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I know, but let's focus on you and the baby now. That's what matters." Jessica cleared her throat. "We need to figure out next steps." The guests are confused. The media will be all over this story by tomorrow, if not sooner. Grayson is trying to manage the fallout, but we need to give him direction. Alison hesitated, her mind spinning. Cancel everything. The wedding dinner, the reception, the hotel blocks, everything. I want them all to leave. She pulled off her wedding shoes and tossed them aside, wincing as the pins in her hair dug into her scalp. "Anyone who has a question can direct it to my lawyers once I find some." Patricia gently rubbed her daughter's back. "You heard her, Jessica. Let's clear out the guests. And let's make sure the press understands we have no comment right now." Jessica nodded, pulling out her phone again. "I'll handle it." Alison sat in silence, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. The suite seemed stifling, filled with the ghosts of a wedding that had ended before it began. She couldn't stop thinking about Cassie, who had claimed Evan's affection all along. Or the texts from the unknown number, warning her about Evan's true nature. Why hadn't she listened to those signs sooner? Meanwhile, in another part of the estate, Evan stood amidst a sea of deserted chairs and half-eaten appetizers. He stared at the shattered champagne glasses on the lawn, remnants from guests who'd dropped them in shock. Cassie lingered nearby, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I had to do it," she whispered, stepping closer. "You were never going to tell her the truth." He whipped around, face contorted with fury. "You ruined my life," he seethed. "I told you I had a plan, and you decided to blow it up in front of the world. Now my deal with the Carter Trust could be gone. My father was watching, my entire board was watching." Cassie trembled, but her resolve remained. "You promised me you'd break it off with her after the wedding. That we'd be together, that you only needed her to produce an heir to guarantee your inheritance. I couldn't stand there and watch you say those vows, not when you told me you loved me." Evan clenched his fists, torn between rage and desperation. "Do you have any idea what you've done? If that trust fund is revoked, if the board sees me as unreliable, my entire empire could collapse." Cassie's lower lip quivered. "And what about me? You lied to me, made me believe I was the one you truly loved, that you were only marrying her as a formality. I found the ring you bought for her. You never intended to leave." He glared at her. "I told you everything was going according to plan until you decided to open your mouth." They stood there in silence, the echoes of the wedding fiasco swirling around them. Photographers snapped photos. Reporters whispered into microphones at the gates. In the far distance, the hum of cars departing could be heard as guests left the estate, scandalized and bewildered. Evan ran a hand through his hair, adrenaline pulsing. "I need to speak to Alison," he muttered. "I can't let it end like this." Cassie sniffed. "Good luck. She hates you now, and she has every right to. You can't fix this with an apology." Leaving Cassie behind, Evan marched toward the mansion, ignoring the event staff who tried to intercept him. He headed straight for the bridal suite, only to find Patricia Harrington standing guard at the door. "Get out of my way," he demanded. Patricia lifted her chin, her voice icy. "You've done enough harm." "My daughter doesn't want to see you right now." He tried to push past her, but Jessica emerged from the suite, stepping between them. "Back off," she warned. "She's in no condition to deal with you." If you care about her or that baby at all, you'll leave." Evan's shoulders sagged in defeat. He looked at the door, a swirl of regret crossing his features. Eventually he turned away, footsteps echoing down the corridor. Inside the suite, Alison heard his fading steps, her heart torn between anger and a painful longing for what might have been. In that moment, she realized the world she'd built with Evan, its promise of love, wealth, and family had been nothing but a mirage. Now, she had to pick up the broken pieces and forge a new path for herself and the child she carried. And she would do it without the man who betrayed her when she needed him most. By sunrise the next morning, the estate was unrecognizable. Tables once laden with floral centerpieces and gourmet hors d'oeuvre had been cleared away. The crystal chandeliers, chairs and decorations were packed into trucks by exhausted event staff. A hush of unease blanketed the grounds, as if even the flowers and birds understood the calamity that had unfolded. Alison awoke in her old bedroom at her mother's modest home, a place she hadn't lived in since moving into Evan's penthouse. The shock of the previous day clung to her like a damp fog. Her phone was inundated with missed calls, texts, and social media alerts. She spotted countless notifications from friends, acquaintances, even some tabloids. Titles like "Millionaire Groom," "Exposed at the Altar," "Wedding from Hell," and "Pregnant Bride." Betrayed popped up in her feed. "Turn it off, Ali," Jessica urged. She had stayed by Alison's side, refusing to leave her alone in the aftermath. Now, they sat at the dining table where Alison once did her homework, a pot of tea between them. Patricia bustled about the kitchen, fussing over eggs and toast, desperate to help her daughter in any way she could. Alison pressed a hand to her temple, feeling a throbbing headache intensify with every beep of her phone. Without a word, she powered it down, severing the torrent of digital chaos. She stared at the blank screen, a swirl of anger, humiliation, and heartbreak swirling inside her chest. Jessica reached across the table, covering Alison's hand with her own. "You don't have to face the world today," she murmured. "Give yourself time." Alison nodded, fighting back tears. "I wish I could forget it all. Just bury my head in the sand until the baby's born." Her other hand drifted to her slight bump. "I can't believe I almost married someone who wanted me just for this child." Patricia set a plate of scrambled eggs and toast in front of Alison. "Don't let him rob you of your appetite," she said gently. "You need to stay strong for the baby." Alison mustered a wan smile, though food was the last thing on her mind. Across the kitchen, Jessica glanced at the clock. "I'll make a quick run to the store," she announced. "We need a few essentials. Ali, do you want anything in particular?" Alison shook her head. "I can't think of anything right now. Just be careful." Jessica squeezed her shoulder. "I'll be back soon." Once Jessica departed, the silence grew heavier. Patricia cleared her throat. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about next steps," she began softly. "I know you're hurting, but have you thought about how you want to handle your relationship with Evan regarding the baby?" Alison sipped her tea, an ache forming in her chest. "He might be a terrible partner, but he's still the child's father," she murmured, the words tangling in her throat. "He has rights, but I can't even imagine letting him near me right now." Patricia nodded. "That's understandable, but you need to protect yourself legally, financially. He's a man of substantial means, and he might try to manipulate the situation. You should talk to a lawyer." Alison swallowed the knot in her throat. The thought of facing lawyers and custody battles made her dizzy, but she knew her mother was right. "I will, Mum. Just give me a few days." Suddenly, a firm knock on the front door jolted them. Patricia's eyes widened in alarm. "I'll get it," she whispered, hurrying to the entryway. Alison's heart hammered. The mere idea that it could be Evan on the other side of that door sent waves of fear and rage coursing through her. Moments later, Patricia returned with a tall, lean man in a tailored suit. Allison recognized him as Joseph Goldman, Evan's top legal advisor and, ironically, the notary who was supposed to witness their prenuptial agreement. Her stomach clenched. What is he doing here? Joseph stood politely, hands clasped. Allison, I'm sorry for the intrusion, he began, voice measured. I came to deliver some documents on Evan's behalf and to express his deep regret over yesterday's events. Patricia's eyes flashed. He has some nerve, sending his lawyer to our home. Couldn't he do this himself? Joseph cleared his throat. I understand your anger, Miss S. Harrington, but my client felt it best to give Allison some space. He also wanted to ensure she has what she needs during this stressful time. Allison's face hardened. What do you mean by that? Reaching into his briefcase, Joseph produced a manila folder. Evan asked me to deliver this. It's a financial provision for you and the baby. He's voluntarily offering monthly support effective immediately, as well as covering all medical bills associated with your pregnancy. Allison refused to open the folder. Is that supposed to buy my forgiveness? Joseph's eyes flickered with discomfort. It's merely a gesture. Evan hopes eventually you'll at least be willing to have a conversation with him. He regrets the turmoil caused. Silence stretched, tension crackling in the air. Patricia put a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. Maybe you should speak to a lawyer before signing anything, she said pointedly. Allison nodded, swallowing hard. She wanted to rip the folder to shreds and throw it in Joseph's face. Yet a practical side of her recognized she had a baby to consider. I'll review it with legal counsel, she said stiffly. But tell Evan this changes nothing. He betrayed me in the worst way. Joseph inclined his head. I will convey your message. Again, my apologies for the disturbance. With that, he handed her his business card, tucked his briefcase under his arm, and left. The moment the door closed, Allison finally exhaled. She sank onto the couch, tears threatening again. Patricia took the folder and set it aside, kneeling beside her. Focus on healing right now, she said softly. We'll tackle the legal stuff together. You're not alone in this. Allison nodded, her shoulders sagging. The heartbreak was relentless, a raw wound that refused to close. She worried for her future, raising a child without the fairy tale family she'd envisioned. What would life look like now? A single mother battling a wealthy ex who saw her as a pawn in a corporate game. But beneath her grief burned a small flicker of determination. She wouldn't allow herself or her child to become another casualty of Evan's manipulations. A new day was dawning, shaped by heartbreak, but also by a mother's fierce resolve. And though the road ahead looked steep and uncertain, Allison resolved to climb it step by painful step until she and her baby stood on solid ground again. 5 days after the disastrous wedding, Allison found herself sitting in a polished downtown office. The plaque on the door read, Elizabeth Meyer, Attorney at Law. Elizabeth had come highly recommended by an old friend of her father's, reputed for being a formidable litigator and a staunch advocate for women's rights. As Allison waited in the reception area, she couldn't help fiddling with her phone, though the barrage of texts and calls had barely subsided. Part of her wanted to vanish from the public eye, but the practical side knew she had to face the aftermath head-on. She was done being a passive participant in her own life. When Elizabeth Meyer finally emerged, she greeted Allison with a warm smile and guided her into a private conference room. I'm so sorry for what you've been through, she said, gesturing for Allison to take a seat. But let's figure out how to protect you and your baby. Allison placed the manila folder from Joseph Goldman on the table, along with the prenuptial agreement that had never been signed. I don't know where to start, she admitted, her voice quivering. He offered financial support, but it feels like hush money. My mother says I should be careful, but I also need to think about prenatal care, bills. I'm just so overwhelmed. Elizabeth flipped through the documents, her expression unreadable. First, we'll confirm the authenticity of these offers and ensure they're not angled to undermine your rights. Then we'll explore your legal standing for child support, custody arrangements, and potential damages if we can prove emotional distress or fraudulent behavior surrounding your relationship. Alison stared at her hands, feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down. What if Evan fights back? He has an army of lawyers, more money than I can imagine. I can't handle a drawn-out battle. Elizabeth nodded sympathetically. I understand, but you have more leverage than you realize. Public opinion is largely on your side, given how everything transpired. If he doesn't settle fairly, we can go public with even more damaging details. Trust me, someone in his position can't afford that kind of negative press. We'll negotiate from a position of strength. Alison took a shaky breath. For the first time since the wedding, she felt a glimmer of hope. Elizabeth's confidence was reassuring someone who believed that justice could be served, or at least a semblance of it. She blinked away tears and mustered a small smile. "Okay," she whispered, "let's do it." Outside, the city bustled with midday traffic, pedestrians hustling down sidewalks, blissfully unaware of Alison's personal crisis. She left Elizabeth's office feeling lighter, armed with at least a preliminary plan. She'd meet with Evan's legal team under Elizabeth's guidance, evaluate the financial support contract, and discuss custody terms for the unborn child. Yet the day was not done with her. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, she spotted a familiar figure leaning against a sleek black sedan, Cassie Brooks. Tension coiled in Alison's stomach, an instinctive reaction to the woman who'd turned her wedding into a public scandal. Cassie, looking decidedly less polished than usual, approached cautiously. "Alison," Cassie began, voice subdued. "Please, can we talk?" Alison hesitated, her mind flashing back to the humiliating scene at the altar. A swirl of anger threatened to resurface, but curiosity mingled with a strange pity. Cassie seemed contrite. "Fine," Alison said, crossing her arms, "but make it quick." Cassie nodded. "I'm sorry about what happened. I never meant to humiliate you like that. I couldn't watch him lie anymore. I thought he was serious about leaving you after the baby was born. Turns out he was stringing me along too." Alison's jaw tensed. "You still helped him cheat on me. Lied to me every day while I was planning our wedding. You only spoke up when it suited you." A haunted look crossed Cassie's face. "You're right, I was selfish. I let him convince me that you two were just a formality, that the child was his key to an inheritance he desperately wanted. I'm not proud of it, but I never expected to see you so heartbroken. It made me realize what a monster he'd become, or maybe what a monster he always was." For a moment, neither woman spoke. The city noises surrounded them, car horns, snippets of conversation, the distant rumble of construction. Cassie broke the silence. "I want to help you if I can. I know things about his finances, his offshore accounts, the real reason he's so desperate for an heir. It might give you leverage." Alison blinked, her breath catching in her throat. "Why would you help me now?" A sad smile tugged at Cassie's lips. "Because I'm done with him too. He's cut me off, threatened to destroy my career if I speak out. But I can't keep living with this guilt. If I can help you and your baby, maybe I can salvage a shred of my conscience." Alison studied Cassie, uncertain. Part of her wanted to turn away, to reject any association with the woman who had played a key role in her heartbreak. But another part recognized the potential value in Cassie's information. "I have a lawyer now," Alison said cautiously. "If you truly want to help, speak to her. But I won't make any deals without ensuring it's safe." Cassie nodded, relief evident on her face. "Thank you. I'll do whatever I can." They exchanged contact details, Cassie promising to forward documents. Then she slipped into her car and drove off, leaving Alison on the sidewalk with her thoughts spinning. Could Cassie be trusted, or was this another manipulation to protect her own interests? Back at her mother's house, Alison relayed the encounter to Patricia and Jessica. Both were skeptical, but Patricia eventually sighed. She might be telling the truth. That man is a piece of work. If her information can help you secure financial stability and legal protection, it's worth investigating. Jessica nodded in agreement, though her eyes remained wary. Just tread carefully, Ali. Alison stared at the slip of paper with Cassie's number. Despite her hesitation, a spark of cautious optimism ignited in her chest. She was no longer that naive bride blindly walking toward betrayal. This was a new chapter, one where she would shield her unborn child from Evan's schemes and, perhaps, find justice in a twisted situation. For the first time since the wedding that never was, Alison felt as though the tides were turning in her favor, however slightly. She wasn't sure if she would ever fully trust again, but she knew she would fight for her child's future with every ounce of strength she had. And if that meant collaborating with an unlikely ally, so be it, because in the aftermath of heartbreak, resilience might just be the key to her salvation. The next few weeks blurred with legal filings, tense phone calls, and a media storm that refused to die down. Alison watched from the sidelines as her story became fodder for tabloids and talk shows. Pregnant bride cancels. Lavish wedding groom exposed for infidelity and deception. She received calls from daytime television hosts requesting interviews, offers from ghostwriters wanting to pen a tell-all book, and even a sensational request to appear on a reality TV show for scorned brides. She turned them all down. Her priority was the well-being of her unborn child, and she had no interest in turning her private tragedy into public spectacle, even though it already felt like the world was gawking at her life. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Elizabeth Meyer orchestrated a carefully calibrated legal strategy. With Cassie Brooks providing insider information, they had compiled a dossier on Evan's business dealings that painted a startling picture: hidden trusts, precarious real estate investments, and a corporate board that valued the continuity of the Carter lineage above all else. The impetus for Evan's rush to produce an heir became clear without one. Certain trust funds and control over key assets would revert to other distant family members. Alison's heartbreak deepened with every revelation. She had been nothing more than a vessel for an inheritance. Yet amid the pain, a fierce resolve took root. If Evan wanted to treat her and her child like pawns, she would become the queen on the chessboard, determined to protect her baby's future. One afternoon, Evan's legal team scheduled a meeting at a neutral conference center. Alison arrived flanked by Elizabeth Meyer and Cassie, who insisted on attending as a witness despite the tension. Evan was already there, seated at a long, polished table with Joseph Goldman and two more attorneys in tailored suits. The atmosphere crackled with hostility. Evan rose as soon as Alison entered, his features taut. She ignored him, focusing instead on her seat at the opposite end of the table. Elizabeth took a spot beside her, while Cassie sat quietly behind them, eyes lowered. Joseph cleared his throat. "We're here to discuss an out-of-court settlement regarding financial support, custody arrangements, and any further obligations you may have toward each other." Elizabeth tapped her pen on a folder. "We have a list of terms that we believe are fair. First, Alison is entitled to monthly child support commensurate with Evan's income. We also request a trust fund be established for the child's education and future expenses, independent of Evan's direct control." Evan looked pained, but he nodded slightly. "I'm willing to do that. I want to ensure my child is taken care of." Alison refused to be swayed by the hint of sincerity in his voice. "You want to ensure your control, you mean?" she murmured, speaking for the first time that day. "Let's not pretend this is out of pure fatherly love." His gaze flicked to her, eyes momentarily filled with something akin to regret. "I know you hate me, Alison, but you must see reason. I genuinely want to be part of our child's life." Her temper flared. Reason? You used me, Evan. You lied about loving me for your own financial gain. I can't ignore that. But I won't deny my child a father if that father can be decent, which is yet to be proven. Joseph intervened. Let's keep this civil. We propose shared custody once the child is born, with incremental visitation rights as the infant grows. Evan is prepared to set up the trust fund, as well as cover all prenatal and postnatal medical expenses. Elizabeth exchanged a look with Alison. We can consider shared custody, but only if Evan undergoes family therapy and demonstrates consistent involvement free of manipulation. Evan bristled at the mention of therapy. I'm not some head case, he muttered, but Joseph placed a restraining hand on his arm. The therapy requirement is a non-negotiable point, Elizabeth added calmly. Given the circumstances of betrayal and the toxic environment, we want to ensure the best possible emotional health for Alison and the child. Tension hung thick in the air as both sides volleyed demands and concessions. Cassie sat quietly, occasionally whispering clarifications about Evan's finances to Elizabeth. Each time, Evan threw her a glare that could scorch steel, but she met his anger with stoic composure, as if committed to this new path she'd chosen. By the end of the day, they had reached a tentative framework. Evan would provide substantial financial support, set up a trust fund, and agree to therapy sessions. Alison would allow structured visitation once the baby was born, provided the environment was safe and healthy. I want it in writing that you won't try to sabotage me, Alison said, voice shaking. No more lies, no attempts to paint me as an unfit mother to your board or your family, no campaigns to force me into giving up custody. Evan's expression softened. I swear I wouldn't do that, but if it makes you feel safer, we'll include it. Everything in writing, Elizabeth emphasized, concluding the meeting. We'll finalize the terms and have the contracts drawn up within a week. As they rose from the table, Cassie made to leave first, but Evan grabbed her wrist. You, he growled under his breath. I hope you're satisfied. You destroyed everything. She pulled away, glaring. No, Evan, you destroyed it yourself. I just refuse to let you continue hurting Alison with your lies. Turning on her heel, she stalked out. Alison watched the exchange, heart heavy. For all his flaws, she remembered how Evan used to be when they first met, charming, attentive, seemingly full of love. But that man was a mirage, and the cold reality was seated across from her. She gathered her things, resisting the urge to look back. Outside, the late afternoon sunlight glowed, a stark contrast to the tension inside. Elizabeth patted Alison's shoulder. We're getting closer to resolution, she said gently. It won't fix everything, but at least it's a start. Alison nodded, inhaling the warm air. Each step forward felt like a victory, but also a reminder of how profoundly her life had changed. Still, she was determined. She'd fight for her baby's future, refusing to let heartbreak define her or her child. The battle lines were drawn, and though the scars might never fully heal, she would emerge stronger on the other side. 2 months after the disastrous wedding day, autumn arrived in Los Angeles with a fresh chill in the air. For Alison, it marked a season of change, far more profound than the weather. She had moved into a modest but cozy townhome near her mother's neighborhood, a stark contrast to the lavish penthouse she once shared with Evan. Now 5 months pregnant, she focused on preparing for motherhood and rebuilding her life on her own terms. Her heartbreak still lingered, but legal matters required her attention. With her lawyer, Elizabeth Meyer, she had negotiated a formal agreement with Evan. He would cover her medical expenses, pay substantial child support, and set up a trust fund for the baby. In return, Alison agreed to consider structured visitation once the child was born. To ensure a healthier environment, Evan had also begun therapy sessions mandated by the court. Early one evening, Alison visited the Carter Trust headquarters to sign the final paperwork. Stepping into the marble-floored lobby, she found Evan waiting in a tailored suit. They exchanged tense greetings, then rode the elevator in silence to a conference room where their lawyers and a notary awaited. The atmosphere felt heavy with lingering regret. They painstakingly reviewed every clause, ensuring both parties' interests and, most importantly, the baby's future were protected. Once the documents were signed, Joseph Goldman, Evan's top legal advisor, shook hands with Elizabeth. Evan looked at Alison, his expression torn between remorse and resignation. "I know I've caused you so much pain," he said quietly, "but I hope one day we can find a way to move forward for our child's sake." Alison's gaze hardened. She simply nodded and left without another word. Outside, the waning sunlight cast long shadows on the busy street. Alison felt a curious sense of relief. The arrangement was a reminder that Evan still loomed in her life, but her path was now her own. She had returned to part-time work at a local non-profit, helping families in crisis, a role that brought her solace. She also spent her free time painting her baby's nursery a gentle mint green, symbolizing the fresh start she desperately needed. Jessica and Alison's mother, Patricia, stood by her throughout. They refused to let her fall into despair, inviting her to small gatherings and helping her gather baby essentials from thrift stores and estate sales. Even Cassie Brooks occasionally pitched in, sending Alison tips about second-hand baby gear. Cassie claimed it was her way of making amends for her role in the scandal. Though Alison's heart still ached, she discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. Each kick of her unborn child reaffirmed her resolve to create a loving, stable home, one defined not by Evan's wealth or broken promises, but by honest support and unwavering devotion. The glitzy wedding might have imploded in a blaze of betrayal, yet out of those ashes rose a more determined woman, ready to embrace life on her own terms. Despite the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the public fallout, Alison discovered that sometimes the worst moments in life can lead to the strongest versions of ourselves. What began as a humiliating wedding day ended with a fierce, loving mother to be ready to defend her child's future at any cost. Although the scars would never fully fade, they became reminders of her resilience and proof that she refused to be defined by one man's treachery. Thank you for joining this emotional journey. If this story gripped your heart and made you root for Alison's triumph over betrayal, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more dramatic tales. Drop a comment below. Would you give Evan another chance, or leave him in the rearview mirror? Hit the notification bell to stay tuned, because you won't want to miss what happens next in our world of twists, turns, and ultimate redemption. Mistress took pregnant wife's wedding ring. Millionaire didn't care until he saw her again. High above the streets of Manhattan, a single ring gleamed under the chandelier's glow. That ring, cherished by a woman carrying the next heir to a fortune, was about to be snatched away by a mistress with dangerous ambition. Whispers of infidelity lingered in every corner of the Harrington estate, but few dared to speak. When betrayal is woven into the fabric of wealth, looming consequences rise like a silent storm. Glimpses of tension in the corridor, hushed arguments late at night. This was merely the calm before the hurricane. As one heart shattered, another would beat faster, hungry for power. Clarissa Harrington gazed out the floor-to-ceiling windows of the luxurious penthouse. She shared with her husband, Alexander Harrington, a man of immense wealth and influence. The glittering skyline of Manhattan had once symbolized all the possibilities they could share. She was 6 months pregnant and wore an elegant, flowing maternity dress that accentuated the gentle swell of her stomach. In her hands, she clutched a cup of chamomile tea, hoping to ease the stress that had been mounting in her life like storm clouds on the horizon. Though she had come from a modest background, Clarissa believed in the transformative power of love. When she had first met Alexander at a fundraising gala in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, she had been charmed by his confidence, intelligence, and the kindness he initially showed. The Harrington family fortune was rooted in real estate investments, tech ventures, and an old shipping empire. Alexander stood at the helm of it all, seemingly unshakable in public, yet tender in private. Their whirlwind romance led to an opulent wedding at the Four Seasons Hotel in Paris, where Clarissa had been gifted a rare, vintage diamond wedding ring from Cartier. That ring was a symbol of her deepest dreams, a lifetime of fidelity, respect, and shared aspirations. But as the old adage goes, sometimes the higher the tower, the more dangerous the fall. Over time, Clarissa began to sense that the warmth between her and her husband was cooling. He worked late hours, traveled frequently, and came home exuding a restless energy that hinted at more than just business deals on his mind. Though she confronted him gently, Alexander always found ways to sidestep her questions. His manner turned evasive, and she was left to doubt herself, blaming stress or the looming responsibilities of impending fatherhood for his shift. One evening, as Clarissa tidied up Alexander's study, she discovered a solitary earring tucked beneath a stack of unopened letters. The design, a bold swirl of emerald and gold, was unfamiliar. Confusion rippled through her, then dread. When Clarissa held it up to the light, her heart pounded. She did not own anything like it. The sense of betrayal began to crystallize. A single earring seemed an absurd thing to unravel a marriage, but that tiny piece of jewelry felt like a bomb in her hands. She took a moment to reflect, standing there in the quiet hush of the study. Would she confront Alexander immediately, or would she wait, gather more evidence, and find a way to prove to herself what her instincts screamed? With the baby's health in mind, Clarissa decided to approach the topic delicately. That night, she calmly asked if Alexander might have had a woman come to the penthouse while she was at a prenatal appointment. He looked at her with mild surprise, then feigned ignorance, claiming that she was overreacting and that it was probably an earring left behind by an old friend or colleague. A creeping loneliness began to fill Clarissa's heart. The man who had once held her close and whispered promises of unwavering devotion was slipping away. Whenever she tried to speak her fears, Alexander dismissed them. At first, she believed her husband's words, wanting so desperately for their life together to remain intact, especially with a child on the way. Days turned into weeks, and in those suffocating moments of doubt, Clarissa decided to turn to the only person she trusted outside her marriage, her closest friend, Margaret White, a well-known fashion designer who had grown up with her in a small town in Massachusetts. Margaret, seeing how drained Clarissa looked, urged her to remain calm and watchful. "If something is truly happening," Margaret said firmly, "the truth will reveal itself. You deserve honesty, Clarissa, especially now. Don't let him gaslight you into believing you're crazy." During that vulnerable period, a new figure drifted into Alexander's world: Elena Walker. Elena was striking, tall, confident, with magnetic green eyes and lustrous dark hair that fell over her shoulders like a cascade of midnight. She had met Alexander at a charity function sponsored by Harrington Industries. Rumor had it she was a socialite with a checkered past, though no one could quite pin down where her fortune originated. She appeared in the social pages, flitting from one opulent event to another. She was a captivating presence, a flame that lured unsuspecting moths. At first, Clarissa had no inkling of Elena's significance, but soon enough, clues began to form a coherent and damning picture. Alexander would mention a meeting with a certain Miss Walker or leave on sudden trips that suspiciously corresponded with Elena's check-ins on social media. A private investigator might have solved the riddle more efficiently, but Clarissa still believed that if she approached her husband honestly, he would own up to whatever was happening. She felt a moral responsibility to fight for her marriage, for her child's future, before concluding that all was lost. That confrontation came one night after Alexander returned from a business dinner. The moment he stepped through the door, Clarissa smelled an unfamiliar perfume lingering on his suit jacket. It was heady, floral, reminiscent of jasmine, and definitely not hers. "Alex, we need to talk," she said, summoning every ounce of courage she had. He seemed tired and on edge. "Clarissa, whatever you think you know, you're exaggerating." She lowered her gaze to the wedding ring on her finger, turning it nervously. "Is there someone else?" she asked, her voice trembling. A long silence hung between them. Finally, Alexander sighed, raking a hand through his dark hair. "I don't want to fight. You're pregnant. Let's not complicate things." But Clarissa refused to be dismissed again. "Alexander," she said, more firmly, "we both deserve the truth." He offered no direct admission. Instead, he deflected, claiming she was being emotional because of her condition. Feeling both enraged and humiliated, Clarissa left him standing in the foyer. She sobbed in the bedroom alone that night, clinging to her belly, whispering promises to protect the child within her. Meanwhile, Elena Walker's presence in Alexander's life grew undeniable, at least from an outside perspective. She attended parties on his arm, smiling for photographers. She dined at exclusive restaurants he once frequented with Clarissa. Gossip columns began to speculate about her new, mysterious benefactor. The entire city seemed to know what Clarissa struggled to accept. Alexander Harrington was having an affair. In the weeks that followed, an uncomfortable arrangement took shape. Alexander no longer bothered to conceal his dealings with Elena. He even bought her an extravagant diamond necklace from Tiffany and Company. Elena flaunted it in social circles, and tabloids printed grainy photos of them, fueling rumors of Alexander's impending divorce. All the while, Clarissa was still living in the penthouse, wrestling with heartbreak, trying to maintain her composure for the sake of the child. Yet what struck Clarissa the hardest was not merely her husband's betrayal, but his increasing cruelty. He began to speak coldly to her, as if her emotional pain was an inconvenient burden. Whenever Clarissa confronted him, he brushed her off, reminding her that their prenup was airtight. "Don't test me," he said. "You'll have what you need, but if you try to take this public, I'll make sure you regret it." Clarissa, bearing a child, felt imprisoned, emotionally and financially. Each day, she contemplated leaving, but her obstetrician warned her of the stress's potential harm to the baby, and Clarissa was terrified of stepping away with no real plan or resources. The prospect of facing the world alone, pregnant and without the Harrington fortune, frightened her. She found herself in a cage, a gilded one, but a cage nonetheless. Then, Elena Walker began to make bold moves, creeping into the penthouse whenever she pleased. On more than one occasion, Clarissa encountered her in the living room or near the private elevator. Alexander continued to gaslight Clarissa, claiming Elena was just dropping off papers or discussing business investments, but Clarissa knew better. The tipping point came one afternoon when Clarissa discovered Elena in her bedroom, her personal, sacred space. The mistress stood by the vanity, fingering Clarissa's hairbrush and delicate accessories. Clarissa's heart pounded with such force she feared for her baby's safety. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded, voice shaking. Elena gave a slow, smug smile. "Alexander said I could wait inside," she replied, not at all ashamed. Her eyes flicked over Clarissa's pregnant form, a sneer twisting at her lips. "He told me you'd be out shopping. Don't get so upset." Fury and humiliation flooded Clarissa. The nerve of this woman to stand in the wife's bedroom as though she owned the place. "I want you out. Now." Elena shrugged elegantly, her slender wrists adorned with bracelets that likely cost more than most people's yearly salaries. "You might be Miss S. Harrington right now," she said, pointing dismissively to the ring on Clarissa's finger. "But he doesn't wear one anymore, does he?" Clarissa forced herself to stay calm for the baby's sake, but her anger demanded release. "Get out," she repeated, stepping aside to let Elena pass. Elena paused at the doorway, turning back with a condescending smirk. "For someone who claims to have it all, you look awfully miserable." In that moment, Clarissa felt the precariousness of her position as never before. She was pregnant, betrayed, and overshadowed by a woman who seemed unstoppable. As Elena left, Clarissa sank onto the edge of the bed, tears soaking her cheeks as she clutched her belly. She resolved then that she would not allow Elena or Alexander to break her spirit entirely. No matter what, she would protect her baby. What Clarissa did not know was that Elena's boldness stemmed from a newfound sense of power. Alexander was infatuated with her. He lavished her with gifts, introduced her to influential figures, and whispered sweet promises that one day soon, Elena would be the true mistress of his empire. Elena considered Clarissa nothing but a temporary inconvenience. That perceived inconvenience soon became a direct threat to Elena's plans, however. Because Clarissa carried the Harrington heir, Elena feared Alexander might never fully sever ties with his wife. She convinced herself that for her own security, she needed to push Clarissa out. More specifically, she needed to crush Clarissa's will to fight. Elena began orchestrating subtle forms of psychological warfare. She would move Clarissa's possessions, leaving the pregnant wife confused and doubting her own memory. She misled staff members into following her orders. She cancelled Clarissa's hairdresser appointments and meddled with her medical checkups. Slowly, she chipped away at Clarissa's sense of stability. Alexander, whose affections were fully consumed by the tempestuous allure of Elena, watched from the sidelines, seldom intervening. His ambition and pride overshadowed any empathy he might have once harbored for his pregnant wife. In truth, he wanted Clarissa to give birth safely, then sign the necessary paperwork so he could secure parental rights while also enjoying a future with Elena. He was too callous or too blinded by lust to realize how monstrous his behavior had become. Despite her heartbreak, Clarissa's one solace was the unborn child. She would place a hand on her belly each night, reminding herself that love still existed. The baby would kick gently, a burst of hope lighting her from within. Meanwhile, Margaret White remained her closest confidant. Whenever Clarissa broke down during phone calls, Margaret offered unwavering support, promising Clarissa there would be life after betrayal. But Elena Walker was far from finished. One late afternoon, Clarissa was in the penthouse library, attempting to lose herself in a book. She needed a distraction, especially since her usual yoga class had abruptly been cancelled by someone claiming to represent her. That's when she heard footsteps. Expecting a staff member or Alexander, she looked up to find Elena standing there, arms folded. "Do you have a moment?" Elena asked coolly. Clarissa closed the book and fought the urge to lash out. "What do you want?" Elena's gaze swept the room, settling on Clarissa's wedding ring. "I've got some advice for you," she said. "You should leave Alexander. Take whatever settlement he offers. Go find a nice, quiet place to raise your child. This penthouse won't be yours much longer." Clarissa's stomach twisted. "You're delusional," she managed. Elena sauntered closer, unstoppable confidence in each step. "I'm practical. You, on the other hand, are clinging to a fantasy. He doesn't love you anymore. You're just the mother of his child." She paused, letting the words sting. "I'm the one he takes out in public. I'm the one he spends time with willingly. Why struggle? Clarissa bit back tears, refusing to show weakness. Because I have dignity. Elena reached out a hand and, to Clarissa's shock, ran her fingers along the wedding band. That ring means less than you think, she said. In fact, it might as well belong to me now. She turned, giving Clarissa a final, haughty stare before leaving the library. Though Clarissa longed to physically remove Elena from the penthouse, she knew Alexander would simply side with his mistress. She felt powerless, yet her determination not to let Elena's smug cruelty destroy her grew deeper. She told herself that once she gave birth, once she made arrangements for a lawyer, she would find a way out free of these entanglements. A week later, the worst betrayal yet occurred. Clarissa, feeling restless, wandered the penthouse corridors late at night. She had insomnia, common in her stage of pregnancy. She paused by Alexander's private office upon hearing laughter inside. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap she saw Elena perched on Alexander's desk, swirling a glass of whiskey. Alexander was leaning back in his leather chair, obviously entertained by something Elena had said. Then Elena's eyes flicked downward to Clarissa's beloved Cartier ring, which she had taken off while washing her hands in the nearby restroom. Clarissa watched with horror as Elena picked it up from the desk, examining it under the lamplight. "I found this lying around," Elena said, chuckling. "What a tiny diamond for a Harrington, don't you think?" Alexander glanced at it, indifferent. "It's old family jewelry, that's all." Elena smirked. "You won't mind if I try it on, right?" Without waiting for permission, she slipped it onto her finger. It fits well enough, surprisingly. Clarissa's breath caught, panic surging. How had her ring gotten there? She recalled taking it off earlier that evening because her fingers were slightly swollen from the pregnancy. She'd placed it carefully on her dressing table, not near Alexander's office. The realization that Elena had gone into her bedroom to steal the ring struck Clarissa like a punch to the gut. Alexander shrugged, swirling his whiskey. "What does it matter? Clarissa doesn't even notice half the things I do anymore." Elena laughed, holding up the ring. "So it's mine now? If you want it," Alexander said coolly. At that moment, Clarissa felt an icy wave of betrayal. The ring was more than jewelry. It symbolized her vows, her love, and the precious memories she had once shared with Alexander. And here he was, handing it off to the very woman destroying their marriage. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. The baby kicked inside her, a jolt that reminded her to protect her own well-being. Tears threatened to escape, but she held them back, turning and slipping away before either of them noticed her. She retreated to her bedroom. She wanted to run in and snatch the ring from Elena's hand, to scream that it was hers. But the heartbreak had hollowed her out, leaving her with no energy for another fruitless confrontation. She felt utterly alone, powerless to stop the mistress who had invaded every aspect of her life. The worst part was Alexander's complicity. The Alexander she had once loved could have never been so heartless. After a sleepless night, Clarissa woke to the cold reality that her treasured wedding ring was gone, taken by the woman who had invaded her home and her marriage. For the remainder of the week, Clarissa was a ghost in the penthouse. She avoided Elena, avoided Alexander, and barely found the strength to eat. She worried constantly about the baby, whose due date was drawing closer. Meanwhile, Elena flaunted the ring openly, sometimes tapping her fingers on a table just to make the diamonds catch the light, a reminder of her triumph over the pregnant wife. She even wore it to a lavish social event at the Plaza Hotel, where paparazzi snapped photos. A few eagle-eyed reporters noticed the ring on Elena's hand and speculated that it resembled an heirloom piece from the Harrington family. But, to Clarissa's astonishment, Alexander made no moves to correct those rumors. Margaret White attempted to stage an intervention upon hearing of these developments. She tried to coax Clarissa into leaving the penthouse. "Come stay with me," she pleaded over the phone. I have plenty of room at my loft, and you can see another doctor if you're worried about not having Harrington money at your disposal." Clarissa nearly agreed. She was tired of the humiliation, the heartbreak, but the moment she thought of leaving, she received a chilling call from Alexander's lawyer, reminding her of the legal complexities of their marital agreement. If she left, she might jeopardize certain conditions that could affect her future custody. The fear of being cornered in a court battle, one that Alexander's expensive legal team could easily dominate, paralyzed her. So she stayed, a silent prisoner. The staff tiptoed around her as if she were a ticking bomb. Elena reveled in her newfound dominion. Alexander was too busy chasing deals and indulging Elena's whims to notice Clarissa's silent despair. Life inside the penthouse devolved into an oppressive hush, broken only by Elena's arrogant laughter and the soft sobs Clarissa failed to conceal at night. Weeks later, Clarissa's water broke prematurely. She was 7.5 months pregnant, fragile and frightened. The stress she'd been under took its toll, and she found herself in the back of an ambulance, gasping for breath as contractions ripped through her body far too soon. The last coherent thought she had before passing out from pain and exhaustion was that she might lose her child. In the hospital, Clarissa underwent an emergency cesarean section. A baby boy named Thomas Harrington was delivered tiny and underweight, but alive. Clarissa spent the next few days recovering. Alexander made only fleeting visits, mostly to sign documents or speak to the doctors. He expressed concern about the baby's condition, but seemed more inconvenienced than worried. Elena, of course, did not deign to appear at the hospital. Gossip columnists noted her presence at a Hampton's garden party during that time. As Clarissa cradled Thomas in her arms, tears ran down her cheeks. She had never felt such a poignant mix of love and desperation. She resolved, with renewed conviction, that she would not let the Harrington empire crush her or her child. Regardless of her heartbreak, her baby came first. Once mother and child were stable enough to return home, Clarissa found the penthouse even more suffocating. Alexander had given Elena the freedom to redecorate portions of the living area, presumably in the name of modernizing the space. Freshly installed was a painting by a famous contemporary artist that Elena adored, an eyesore that replaced Clarissa's beloved family heirloom painting. Elena had also rearranged the furniture, removing the rocking chair Clarissa had bought for the baby's nursery. The staff said Elena had deemed it ugly. Exhausted from sleepless nights tending to Thomas, Clarissa confronted Alexander. "Enough is enough," she said, voice trembling. "I will not let her treat our home like it's hers." Alexander shrugged. "It's just furniture, Clarissa. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is. You have a healthy baby boy, focus on that." Anger exploded within her. "A bigger deal?" She threw out my nursery chair. "She has my wedding ring. She is taking everything from me, and you stand here doing nothing." He waved a hand dismissively. "You're hormonal. Stop making a scene." And with that, he left to meet Elena for a lunch date. Clarissa realized she was truly alone, battling for dignity, for a future for her child. She called Margaret once more, and this time she decided she would take some steps to secure her own independence. First, she quietly contacted a different legal firm, one that specialized in high-stakes divorces, known for their discretion and formidable expertise. She also began setting aside small sums of money that Margaret helped her funnel into a new account, away from Alexander's prying eyes. All the while, Elena's arrogance soared. She believed she had won after all. She had Alexander wrapped around her finger and wore Clarissa's ring as a twisted trophy. Clarissa avoided any direct confrontations, biding her time, focusing on the baby's well-being. She found an ally in the penthouse staff, an older housekeeper named Dorothea. Disgusted by Elena's antics, Dorothea helped Clarissa reclaim small personal items that Elena tried to discard. Dorothea would also secretly hand Clarissa receipts or financial records that revealed Alexander's transfers to Elena, valuable evidence should Clarissa need it in court. Bit by bit, Clarissa began building her quiet arsenal, determined to leave this toxic environment on her own terms. But fate had more twists in store. One stormy night, Alexander and Elena threw a lavish cocktail party in the penthouse. They invited powerful investors and socialite friends, people who could expand Alexander's influence and elevate Elena's status. Clarissa stayed in her bedroom with Thomas, trying to remain invisible. The baby fussed, disturbed by the noise of clinking glasses and loud conversation. Around midnight, Clarissa tiptoed out to get more formula from the kitchen. She hoped the party had died down, but to her surprise, the event was still in full swing. She tried to make herself as inconspicuous as possible, slipping through the fringes of the crowd. That's when she overheard a conversation that would shake her to the core. Standing in the corner, Elena laughed with a couple of socialites, swirling a glass of champagne. She boasted about her upcoming shopping spree in Milan, courtesy of Alexander. Then she dropped her voice. "He's also about to close a deal that'll leave Clarissa with almost nothing," she whispered, her tone glacial. "He found a legal loophole in their prenuptial agreement. Clarissa will walk away with peanuts. Poor thing. But that's what happens when you're blind to reality." A jolt of panic coursed through Clarissa. She quietly retreated before Elena or her companions spotted her. Her baby would be left with nothing if Alexander manipulated their finances in such a way. She realized that time was running out. She could no longer remain passive and let them rob her child's future. She hurried back to her room, mind racing. Gathering her baby in her arms, Clarissa whispered, "It's you and me against the world, little one." She decided that as soon as the party ended and the penthouse was quiet, she would pack her essentials and leave. She would flee to Margaret's loft and figure out the rest. Anything was better than subjecting her child to this nest of deceit. However, as she began to gather the baby's things, her phone buzzed. It was Dorothea. She texted, "They're on to you. Be careful." Clarissa's heart hammered. Did Elena or Alexander realize she might run? The sense of urgency escalated. Clarissa began stuffing diapers, formula, and baby clothes into a discreet bag, all while Thomas dozed in his bassinet. She knew that if Elena or Alexander caught her in the act, they might retaliate. She tried to quell her panic, repeating to herself, "Stay calm. For the baby's sake, stay calm." An hour later, the noise of the party dwindled. Clarissa peered out of her door, scanning the hallway. Most of the guests seemed to have left. Then she heard Elena's voice near the front entrance, thanking people for coming. Alexander's voice chimed in, sounding tipsy and in high spirits. Now, Clarissa thought, is my chance. She slipped into the corridor and made for a side entrance that led directly to a service elevator. She prayed it would remain empty. Thomas started whimpering, as if sensing his mother's tension. She gently soothed him, pressing the button to call the elevator. Just then, footsteps. Clarissa's blood froze as Elena emerged from around the corner. She was still in her glittering cocktail dress, the stolen wedding ring glistening on her finger. Her gaze locked on the diaper bag and Clarissa's anxious posture. "What do you think you're doing?" Elena demanded. Clarissa's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm done with this place." Elena stalked toward her, features twisting in scorn. "You can't just leave." "Alexander." "I don't care about Alexander anymore," Clarissa hissed, one arm protectively cradling Thomas. "I'm leaving, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." The elevator dinged open. Clarissa tried to hurry inside, but Elena lunged, grabbing Clarissa's arm. Thomas cried, alarmed by the jolt. "Let go," Clarissa spat. Elena's nails dug into Clarissa's skin. "You're not taking that child away," she hissed. You think Alexander will let you? That baby is his heir. Clarissa wrenched free, stepping into the elevator. Watch me. In that instant, Elena snatched at Clarissa's bag, trying to prevent her from leaving. Clarissa fought back, struggling to keep her balance. The elevator doors began to close. Desperate, Elena aimed for something to truly shock Clarissa. She reached out and grabbed at Thomas. Horror filled Clarissa as she twisted her body to shield her child. The elevator doors slammed shut with a metallic thud, forcing Elena to recoil at the last moment. Inside the elevator, Clarissa trembled, tears streaming down her face. She pressed the button for the basement parking garage, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it might burst. She had no idea what awaited her outside, but anywhere was safer than that penthouse. She fled into the night, calling Margaret to pick her up. Margaret arrived in her sleek SUV, helping Clarissa strap in the baby. Clarissa's cheeks burned with a mixture of relief and terror at what she had just done. "I can't go back, Margaret," she said brokenly as they sped away. "I won't," Margaret nodded, glancing worriedly at Thomas's tear-streaked face. "We'll find a way to protect you," she assured. "You and the baby." For several months, Clarissa lived in Margaret's guest bedroom. She hired a reputable divorce lawyer who had no fear of tangling with the Harrington machine. The arrangement was difficult. Clarissa missed the financial security and worried about how to pay for Thomas's medical needs, as he required ongoing checkups and specialized care. But she clung to the small triumph of freedom. Alexander's response was initially furious. His lawyers bombarded Clarissa with calls and letters, threatening everything from custody battles to defamation suits if she didn't return. He wanted to ensure the heir remained under his control. But Clarissa's legal team held firm, pointing out Alexander's infidelity, Elena's harassment, and the numerous ways Clarissa's health and the baby's well-being had been jeopardized. Meanwhile, Elena Walker reveled in her newfound freedom as the undisputed companion of Alexander. For a time, she and Alexander graced every social event, flaunting their relationship without shame. Elena believed she had ascended to the pinnacle of power. She had Clarissa's ring, a trophy that seemed to confirm her victory. She boasted to her friends that soon she'd be the new Mistress Harrington, that Clarissa's baby would be an afterthought as Alexander set up a trust fund and moved on. But karma has a way of creeping up when arrogance blinds people to their own vulnerabilities. Unbeknownst to Elena, her success hinged on Alexander's unwavering wealth. And Alexander's empire, though vast, faced emerging challenges. A major real estate deal began to sour, tying up a significant portion of his assets. A labor dispute in his shipping line threatened to cause massive losses. Investors questioned his reckless spending on lavish gifts for Elena, perceiving it as a sign of poor judgment. The cracks in his once impenetrable fortress deepened. Moreover, Elena had grown greedy. She pressured Alexander to buy her extravagant properties in different cities, fund her private jet trips, and bankroll a fashion line she wanted to start. Alexander struggled to keep up appearances, funneling money in ways that strained the liquidity of his businesses. Banks grew concerned, stockholders demanded accountability, and rumors circulated that the Harrington Empire might be on precarious footing. As Alexander's attention turned to damage control, he became less enamored with Elena's constant demands. Tension flared. She blamed him for not delivering the lifestyle she believed she deserved. He became weary of her incessant spending. The fights escalated, culminating in nights of screaming matches that rattled the penthouse walls. The staff cowered, powerless to intervene. Elena responded by indulging in the social scene on her own, attending parties without Alexander. She flirted with wealthy entrepreneurs in hopes of hedging her bets. Gossip columns hinted that Elena Walker, the infamous mistress, might be searching for a new sponsor. The tabloids used words like gold digger, though always in whispers. Alexander, realizing the damage to his reputation, scrambled to salvage his finances and avoid catastrophic legal ramifications. His attorneys advised him to minimize negative publicity and settle the divorce with Clarissa swiftly and quietly. If he dragged it out, it would tarnish his public image further. Investors did not want their money tied to an executive entangled in a salacious, drawn-out scandal. Thus, the stage was set for the day Alexander and Clarissa would meet again, face to face, after months of separation. Their lawyers arranged a mediation session in a stately conference room at a law firm overlooking Central Park. Clarissa arrived first, dressed in a simple yet elegant black dress. She felt a flutter of nerves. It was the first time she'd be seeing Alexander since that dreadful night she fled the penthouse, clutching Thomas to her chest. Her hands trembled slightly, but Margaret stood behind her, offering silent reassurance. Clarissa drew in a deep breath, reminding herself that she was no longer the terrified pregnant wife who cowered in hallways. She was a mother now, fighting to secure a future for her son. Alexander entered minutes later, flanked by his legal team. He looked thinner, his once confident posture fraying around the edges. For a moment, their eyes met. Clarissa felt a pang of sorrow for what might have been, for the love they once shared. But the memory of betrayal and cruelty flared just as quickly, stealing her resolve. The mediation began. Clarissa's lawyers laid out the terms: child support, spousal maintenance, division of assets. Initially, Alexander's team countered with arguments about the prenup, but Clarissa's counsel presented evidence of Alexander's infidelity, emotional abuse, and negligence. There were documented testimonies from staff who had witnessed Elena's harassment and Alexander's callous behavior. The hearing grew tense. Alexander shifted uncomfortably as Clarissa recounted, in a calm, measured tone, the impact of his actions on her health and the well-being of their child. Alexander's eyes flickered with something akin to guilt. He cleared his throat and glanced away, struggling to maintain his composure. "I never wanted to hurt you or the baby," he murmured at one point, unable to meet Clarissa's gaze. When the session neared a conclusion, the mediator proposed a settlement. Clarissa would receive a fair portion of funds, a property in her name, and full custody of Thomas, with visitation rights for Alexander under specific conditions. With his finances in a precarious position, Alexander's lawyers strongly advised him to accept. A drawn-out court battle could devastate him further, both financially and in the public eye. He hesitated, glancing briefly at Clarissa. "Fine," he said, voice strained. "Let's finalize it." He signed the documents, a resigned air about him. Clarissa also signed, her heart pounding with relief. She would finally have a clear path forward. She could raise Thomas in peace, yet even now, part of her ached for the dream she had once cherished: a loving marriage, a united family. But that dream was long gone. Before leaving, Clarissa paused by the window, staring at the lush expanse of Central Park. Alexander came up behind her, hands shoved in his pockets. "I know I can't undo what I did," he said quietly, a trace of remorse in his voice. "But I hope, someday, you'll forgive me." Clarissa turned, meeting his eyes, those same eyes that once made her melt. "Forgiveness is a process, Alexander, but I will never forget." With that, she walked out, Margaret at her side. The final break from the Harrington penthouse was complete. No more midnight tears, no more stolen jewelry, no more manipulative cruelty. Yet one piece of unfinished business lingered: the wedding ring. Elena still flaunted it, at least as far as Clarissa knew. The settlement papers made no mention of it, and Clarissa hadn't insisted on its return because she assumed it was lost forever, another casualty of betrayal. In truth, she had mixed feelings. The ring once symbolized a love that had proven false, and part of her wanted to let it go. Yet the violation stung. Clarissa refocused on her new life. She purchased a cozy apartment near Margaret's loft, adorning a bright nursery for Thomas. She found modest happiness in daily routines, feeding her son, watching him grow, bonding with supportive friends. She also started freelancing as a consultant in public relations, using her experience from organizing charity galas during her marriage. Time passed, and rumors swirled. Alexander and Elena's relationship spiraled downward. Investors had lost faith in Alexander's leadership, leading to the downsizing of several Harrington ventures. Instead of the golden future Elena had envisioned, she was saddled with a man struggling to keep his empire afloat. She tried to continue her lavish lifestyle, but the money stream narrowed. Alexander, embittered and stressed, blamed Elena for pushing him into extravagant spending. Their once passionate affair turned into a battlefield of accusations and venom. One fateful day, Clarissa needed to attend a charity event for a children's hospital. She was part of the organizing committee, having found purpose in assisting families with premature infants, her own experience fueling her compassion. She dressed elegantly in a sleek navy gown, leaving Thomas in Margaret's capable care. Upon arriving at the venue, a grand ballroom, donated by a philanthropic organization, Clarissa mingled, greeting fellow committee members, donors, and hospital staff. Then her heart jolted when she spotted a familiar figure, Alexander Harrington. He was standing near the entrance, looking haggard. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his once pristine suit looked slightly rumpled. He wore no tie, and his hair had a disheveled air. It was a stark contrast to the polished millionaire she had married. Their gazes met. Awkward tension flickered. Clarissa mustered a polite nod. She wouldn't let the past overshadow her present responsibilities. Alexander lingered by the bar, as though unsure if he should approach her. As Clarissa made her rounds, greeting donors, speaking briefly on stage about her personal story with Thomas, she felt Alexander's eyes on her. When she stepped off stage, he approached, clearing his throat. "You spoke beautifully," he said quietly, searching her face for any sign of warmth. Clarissa offered a polite smile. "Thank you." An uneasy silence hung between them. Then Alexander sighed. "You look well. How's Thomas?" Clarissa lifted her chin. "He's thriving, growing so quickly." Alexander seemed genuinely relieved. "I'm glad to hear that. Listen, Clarissa, the first no, everything I say now probably means nothing, but I'm truly sorry for what happened. My life, it's in pieces." Clarissa blinked, taken aback by his candor. "I'm sorry for that," she said, surprising even herself. "But you dug your own grave, Alexander." He nodded, eyes clouded with regret. "You're right." Before their conversation could continue, a sudden commotion drew their attention near the entrance. Elena Walker had arrived, though she looked very different from her usual glamorous self. She wore a flashy dress, but her face showed signs of stress, lines of desperation around her eyes. She scanned the crowd and spotted Alexander, storming toward him. People turned to watch, sensing drama in the air. "Alexander," she hissed, her voice carrying. "Why are you ignoring my calls? We need to talk now," he grimaced. "Elena, this is not the time or place." She scoffed, eyes blazing. "When is it ever the right time for you these days? You're always dodging me." Her gaze flicked to Clarissa. "Oh, of course. You're too busy ogling your ex-wife to remember your obligations." Clarissa stepped back, wanting no part of the argument. Onlookers whispered, astonished that Elena would cause a scene at a children's charity event. But Elena was past caring about decorum. She latched onto Alexander's arm, glaring. "You promised me a future," Elena spat. "You said you'd pay my credit card bills, help me launch my boutique in Milan." "You've bled me dry," Alexander shot back, face flushed. "I have nothing left to give." Elena laughed bitterly. "That's not what you told me when you were in my bed, giving me that pathetic woman's ring." She pointed at Clarissa. She's the cause of your problems, isn't she? If you had fully cut her off, if you hadn't wasted your money settling with her, we'd still be fine. Clarissa's jaw tightened. Pathetic woman's ring. The memory stung. She fought the urge to respond, focusing instead on the fact that Elena still wore the ring. It gleamed on her finger under the ballroom's lights, a cruel reminder. Alexander grabbed Elena's wrist. "Don't you dare speak about Clarissa that way," he growled, surprising both Clarissa and Elena. "You have no idea the damage you've caused." Elena yanked her hand back. "Me? Don't you dare shift blame on me. You're the one who welcomed me in." Their voices rose, echoing through the ballroom. Mortified staff tried to usher them away, but it was too late. Spectators watched, riveted. Finally, a security guard approached, politely requesting they take their dispute outside. Elena exploded in fury. "Don't touch me!" She tore away from the guard, then turned to Alexander. "If you won't pay my bills anymore, I'll pawn this worthless ring you gave me." She brandished Clarissa's stolen wedding ring for all to see. "It's probably not worth half of what you owe me, but it'll do." Clarissa felt a strange mixture of vindication and heartbreak. To see her cherished wedding ring, the ring that once symbolized her dream of forever, reduced to a mere bargaining chip in Elena's tantrum, was painful beyond words. Alexander's eyes flicked to Clarissa, and for the first time that night, she caught a glimpse of true remorse in them. "That ring," he said, voice hoarse, "was never mine to give." Elena's sneer widened. "Well, I have it now." She started tugging at the ring, intending to remove it. She yanked once, no movement. She tried again, more forcefully, but the ring seemed stuck. Growing frustrated, she pulled a third time, her face reddening. The ring refused to budge, caught on her knuckle. A wave of embarrassed laughter rippled through the onlookers. Elena's cheeks flamed. She marched to a nearby champagne bucket, dunked her hand in the ice water, and twisted viciously. At last, the ring slid off, leaving a red mark around her finger. She flung it at Alexander's chest. "There, take it. Useless piece of junk." The ring bounced off Alexander's shirt and clattered to the floor. For a moment, time seemed to slow. Everyone stared at the diamond ring as it rolled across the marble tiles, finally coming to rest near Clarissa's feet. She bent down, heart pounding, and picked it up. For a split second, she just stared at it in her palm, remembering the day Alexander slid it onto her finger in front of family and friends, promising a lifetime of devotion. Elena, seething with humiliation, stormed out of the ballroom, leaving everyone gaping. Alexander stood there, speechless. Clarissa slowly closed her hand over the ring. A hush fell over the crowd. Tears pricked at Clarissa's eyes, but she blinked them back. At length, she walked over to a donation box set up for the children's hospital. She paused, gazing at the ring one final time. It symbolized so many broken promises, she thought. Then, with a resolute gesture, she dropped the ring into the box. A flurry of gasps erupted. Some might have seen it as a dramatic flourish. To Clarissa, it felt like liberation. Alexander stepped forward, stunned. "Clarissa," she held up a hand, halting him. "It was mine, but it lost its meaning the day you gave it to her. I'm done letting it weigh me down." For a beat, Alexander looked like he might argue, but he saw the conviction in Clarissa's eyes. He nodded slowly, accepting her choice. As the staff and security discreetly guided bystanders to resume the event, Clarissa turned away from Alexander, holding her head high. She didn't need that ring any longer. She had already found a greater treasure, her son, her independence, and her self-worth. No diamond could ever compare. In the aftermath, gossip columns feasted on the story of Elena's meltdown, the fall of the once haughty mistress who had tried to rule the Harrington penthouse, and the quiet grace with which Clarissa reclaimed her dignity. Paparazzi photos captured Clarissa dropping the ring into the charity box, an act that many deemed symbolic of triumph over betrayal. Donations to the Children's Hospital soared in the following weeks, inspired by what tabloids called the ring that freed her. Elena Walker drifted into obscurity, her finances precarious without Alexander's backing. She attempted to latch onto another wealthy patron, but her reputation for greed had preceded her, and doors began to slam shut. The last Clarissa heard, Elena had been spotted in less glamorous social circles, rumored to be pawning designer bags to pay her bills. Karma had indeed come calling. Alexander Harrington spent years rebuilding his fortune and his name. He quietly visited Thomas on agreed-upon weekends. Over time, his relationship with his son became one of genuine care, though the bond he had once shared with Clarissa would remain irrevocably broken. Clarissa thrived. She turned her experiences into a motivational impetus, speaking at women's groups about resilience and starting over. She continued her consultancy work in public relations and eventually partnered with Margaret White to organize charity galas worldwide. Though the heartbreak she had endured left scars, she discovered an unbreakable strength within herself, one that no ring, no fortune, and no betrayal could ever tarnish. She had learned that in the end, true wealth wasn't measured in diamonds or penthouses, but in love, self-respect, and the freedom to pursue a life of peace and integrity. And as Clarissa cradled her growing son each night, hearing his playful giggles, she felt certain that while the mistress might have taken a ring, she could never steal what truly mattered. True strength often shines brightest after the hardest fall. Clarissa's journey from a trapped pregnant wife to an independent, empowered mother shows that betrayal can pave the way to triumph if we refuse to let it define us. Every twist in her story, every stolen treasure, cruel remark, and shattered promise led her closer to discovering her own worth. If this tale stirred your emotions, gave you hope, or reminded you of the power of self-respect, your support can carry this message even further. Help others realize that no obstacle is insurmountable by sharing this video, letting them see how heartbreak can transform into resilience. Tap that like button if you believe in second chances and new beginnings. And if you want more stories that highlight the strength of the human spirit, subscribe to this channel. Together, we'll keep shining a light on tales of courage, healing, and renewal.